Cool. Yeah, so as Alan said, I've been working with the Eagle Group for it's a couple of years now, doing things with the website, the emails, the invites that go out, put those together. Was working on the website for quite some time. I kind of got pulled in. I'm actually not a vet. I got introduced to the Eagle Group by Adam Narica, the president. I worked with him at U.S. Bank, and he had me visit a business resource group meeting. And I was like, "Hey, I'm not a veteran." He's like, "Oh no, it's fine. Just come on down." So I came down, and he kind of talked about all the great stuff that the Eagle Group has done. And at the end of it, he said, "Hey, would you like to be involved?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Is that allowed?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's fine." So anyway, long story short, couple years later, still working with the Eagle Group, doing kind of the communication side of things. But yeah, I let's see. It started back around the beginning of May. I was working at a tech startup in the Twin Cities, and I was kind of having a tough go of it. Wasn't really enjoying the role. Was feeling frustrated, and you know, wasn't really enjoying my time there. And I've been talking to Adam for a long time, and we had a conversation, and he said, what's your plan? And I was like, well, there's a lot of issues with COVID, and there's all these different things going on. I'm not really looking to make a move right now. I'll kind of wait until the dust settles with this whole pandemic. And he just kept kind of like, asking, "Oh, okay, so when are you thinking?" He's like, well, sooner rather than later. He said, I worked at the bank for quite some time, and so I had some pretty good ties with everyone, left on good terms, no burnt bridges. So he said, why don't you just reach out to Srini, the chief analytics officer? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, he's a pretty busy guy. Maybe down the road. And he just kind of put the bug in my ear. And so, I was talking with Alan, and we were coordinating on some of the communication pieces. And I was kind of just talking about some of the things that I was thinking as far as reaching out to the analytics officer at the bank. And, the more that I was talking to these guys, I was like, I don't know what I'm waiting for. It's like I've run out of excuses for just taking some type of action. So that week I went and, updated my resume, went through kind of my whole time at that tech startup, and kind of, synthesized some of the bigger projects and in what I'd been doing there. And it was a Sunday night, and from the conversations that Alan and I had, and if I had to divvy up the credit for me getting this job, I mean, it's about halvesies with Alan, because when the conversation that I had with him, the preparation and just the advice that he gave me, I really honestly think it was the direction and the advice that I needed when I needed it, because I was planning on, having a conversation, and I wasn't going to, give all the details about why I was unhappy at the current role, but I was going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm frustrated about this, and, I'm trying to do that and this and this." And Alan was like, "No, no, 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 no. Don't say any of that. Here's what you want to say." And so we went through, and it was like piece by piece by piece. And as he was kind of giving me this advice, I was like, yeah, that's a lot better than what I was going to say, or that's a lot more on point. And it really just helped me distill down the messaging. So when I went and finally, sent this email off to the chief analytics officer, it was a very honed, finely crafted communication about, "Hey, I really value your advice. I'd like to get some feedback. I feel like I'm at a crossroads with my career. Do you have time for a conversation?" I mean, that was really the high level messaging that I sent over. And so that was Sunday night. Before 7 a.m. the next morning, he had already responded, and he CC'd his admin, and he said, "Yep, would love to, connect and, offer some advice, connect with my assistant to set up a time. And so, I'd already gotten my resume together. I'd already gotten some things together, if things had gone, because it was going to go like one of three ways, right? Like it was going to go well, it was going to get ignored, or he was going to, say no thanks. So he said yes. So it's like, okay, I've passed that first gate. Now moving on to, actually talking to him. And we'd already discussed some of the finer, some of the points. Really, it was just a restating of the things that were in the email, saying, okay, I feel like I'm at a crossroads. I can either double down and stay at where I'm at, or explore some other opportunities, and I'd like to get your advice. He wasn't interested in giving any advice. He was there for one thing and one thing only. He wanted to know if I was interested in coming back to the bank. And so basically I was like, I'd certainly be willing to explore some options. And later that afternoon, he put me in contact with the hiring manager for the digital reporting team at the bank. Talked to her, had a really good conversation with her. They set a meeting up, a phone call on Thursday. So this was Wednesday. They set another phone call up for HR on Thursday. I reconnected with Marissa after that on Friday morning and had another kind of long conversation about, okay, here's what I'd like to do. Here's what I'm not doing. Here's kind of the path forward, if we decide to go that route. And we got aligned on, kind of where I want to go, what her expectations were. And by Friday afternoon, I had an offer. And it was just, so it was Sunday night to Friday afternoon, like offer in hand, I'm starting a new job at US Bank. I don't know if that's a record, but it might be close. But the preparation that went in beforehand, because I have never gone through a process that quick. It's always been, this long drug out. Okay, this week you're talking to HR, a couple weeks later you're going to connect with the hiring manager, all this other stuff. That's a typical scenario. It doesn't always go like that. As kind of my case is the point of, is that if I hadn't gone through and revamped the resume, connected with Alan, kind of figured out my elevator pitch, figured out what I actually wanted, because he kind of put me on the spot and he's like, well, what do you actually want to do? And I feel like a lot of people, myself included, have this kind of, very generic, oh, well, I want to, move forward in my career and I want to do this and this and this. But like to specifically, have to articulate that, like, if he asks you what you want, do you have a good answer? And when he put me on the spot, I didn't. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, that's something that I need to sharpen that. So just really having those conversations, and Alan, like I said, I have to give him all the credit in the world. Him preparing me and getting me to just think about those types of things, what I wanted, what I was going to ask for. If he put me on the spot and wanted to know the salary, give me a number. Like, you have to have the number. That's not something that you can kind of be, figuring out on the spot, because if you have that uncertainty, the person on the other end of the phone, or the other person, they're going to pick up on that uncertainty, and they're going to, more than likely probably lowball you. So it was just all that work that kind of went in to plan out how that conversation was going to go, because it's different, talking to someone like that, like a chief analytics officer, versus talking to Alan, or talking to, somebody in the group. It's like, oh yeah, you can make a mistake in your speech and in what you're trying to communicate, and you can kind of backtrack, or you can make up for it. When you're writing an email, or when you're having that, like, you finally get the phone call, there's no room for error. You have to be so certain and so dialed in. And that's that whole thing about, what's the topic about? It's that you just have to be ready. You have to have that figured out and thought through, because, you have to kind of predict where the conversation is going to go and have answers for when it does eventually go there. You can, some of the things that Alan pointed out was that you can help direct the conversation, and that's what you want to do. You want to get them to kind of move in the direction that you want them to go in, and have the expectation, or have kind of the answers for the questions that they're going to be asking once you get there. So it was great. I've spent a lot of time working with the Eagle Group, and having been a beneficiary of the help here, it just reinforces all of the things that I already knew about, all the cool stuff that Alan and everybody on the team has been doing for a really long time. So that's kind of my story. It was a whirlwind. I was so wrapped up with thank you emails and everything else. Like, I think it was Monday morning, Alan's like, "Hey, so what happened?" I was like, "Oh, should have probably let you know how that all shook out." But yeah, it was really wild when it happened. And I've been back about a month at the bank, and it's worlds different than working at a job where I just felt stuck, not supported, just kind of in a really bad place, to now be in a better environment where it's like, oh, people appreciate the stuff that I'm doing. People care about what I'm doing. I'm not just kind of like pushing the corner, even though we're all, kind of working remotely from the office. I don't feel like I'm on an island like I did at the tech startup. So it was really great, and it was really crazy. And if there's anything, any piece of advice or any learnings that I can pass on from that, is just, you doing the work here in this group on these Tuesdays, it pays major dividends once you get put on the spot and have to kind of deliver and have those kind of tough conversations. So that is kind of my spiel. Be happy to answer any questions or chat about any of that stuff. So.
Well, I'm going to jump in, and as the moderator, I do have one question, which I think people aren't aware of. Is you mentioned early on a business resource group that Adam had gotten you involved in?
Yep.
Can you explain more about what that is, or
Sure.
what that means, or how I could connect with it?
Yeah, so at US Bank, there's a bunch of business resource groups. They love acronyms at the bank, BRG. Adam's with the Veterans BRG at the bank, and so they put on different events. I think they have a couple times a year, like a hiring fair. They'll put on like a monthly meeting type thing, and it's the one that I attended that really kind of stuck out to me was where they had a bunch of, it was actually a lot of folks who were civilians that did different things for vets. Like, one was a group that they train service dogs. So, they go and they raise these dogs from puppies, and, they give them to vets who have PTSD. And so then that dog is their service dog. And that was what their group did. There was another group that they made like quilts that, it was this group of old knitting ladies, and they made all these quilts that they sent overseas. And, there were all these different groups that, and in that instance, they were civilian groups that were, kind of helping out. And, when I saw all that kind of stuff, it really just inspired me to, just kind of chip in with the Eagle Group and kind of contribute and do whatever I could to help, because this group is awesome. And, like I said, I am a beneficiary of this group at this point. So it's been a great experience working with Alan and everybody in the group. So.
Was that the MACV stand down that you were at for all that?
What's that?
Was that the MACV stand down that you were at for all that?
I don't know. It was hosted at the Richfield location. This was probably back in 2018, something. I think it was the Arrowhead Room at Richfield. If you've been to that location, the Meridian Towers.
Okay.
So.
That's great, Wes. Thanks for sharing your story. I think it's very encouraging to a lot of people. And Alan, of course, he's our, five diamond star, gold star, whatever you want to call him, person of the group. So great resource. But a couple of takeaways that I had from you is that know what you want. You didn't necessarily know what you wanted, but you reached out and you were able to, I assume, because this is how I do it, is I just start thinking out loud in front of someone else, and help me sort of distill it and say, I think this is what I heard you say. And you're able to sort of hone it down out of, the cloud in your head onto something that you can actually articulate. So, and then secondly, know the person that you're going to interview with, and use people like Adam and Erika in this case, or, LinkedIn or someone else, at the company or through networking to understand who your interviewer is and what they want. So those were the takeaways that I heard you say, and I just wanted to distill that a little bit for some others in the group too.
Yep, and that second piece, knowing who you're communicating to, because that was one of the things that Alan really keyed in on, is Alan asked, what's this guy like? And, he's a chief analytics officer. He's not one for BS. He's not one for small talk. Yep. He wants you to get to the point. He wants you to tell, say whatever it is, get to your main idea, whatever that is, and give him the information that he needs to make a decision. Let him make that decision, and then moving on. So with that in mind, I was thinking, I'd kind of give him some background. I, kind of give a little BS, talk about the Vikings, do this, do that. No. Just get to the point, say what you want to say, and let him respond. So.
Totally agree, Wes. Thank you for that. And I just, to add on to that part, thank you, Renee, because I had a one-on-one with her a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still struggling with that whole, what do I want to do? And she just asked me questions, and next thing you know, and same with Michelle and Alan both too, of course, helped me write my first resume of what do I want to do, especially in HR. It's so, so wide. And then all of a sudden I'm just starting to answer questions. I'm like, oh, well, this is exactly what I want to do. I answered it for myself just by asking my own questions. So that was definitely helpful. And Wes, if you don't mind, if I ask a question. So I, believe it or not, I'm actually in the very similar position of a company that I was not expecting to be with. I didn't change my resume. I didn't do anything to cater to this position, but they're very interested in me. And it was an HR entry position, but I learned that I'm not interested in doing that. I also, with this whole veteran thing, we have this this humble personality, I like to say. And so you're like, well, I can't just jump in and be the HR manager without earning trust from my employees, because that is important to me. But at the same time, I do know that I've earned that position as well. So that's been a struggle for me to fight for that. And so when I had a interview, I'm actually going on my third interview tomorrow, still not prepared, but they're interested in me, and I haven't prepared very well just because I've been on actual vacation. This is a real big vacation time for my family. But it's with the G4S security company. And of course, this whole informational interview is not really ever an informational interview. It's an actual interview. Yeah. And so that was a takeaway for me there. And I know there's a few people on here that said, I would love to give you some interview advice and do some practice interviews. Well, I haven't prepared for it because I just really am trying to take a step back, but at the same time, I'm really interested. And one thing that Renee told me was that make them want you. Don't tell them that I need some time off. Make them want you and tell them this is when I was available or when I'm available. But tomorrow, so they actually talked me out of this HR position, and they want me to apply for a different position that's not even listed. It's only internal with the recruiting manager position, nice. Which happens to be way more in my line of what I'm interested in. But the one thing I stumble on, Wes, I noticed that you said was the salary thing. And I've already kind of boloed that twice in a couple of the informational interviews that I've had. And so if you wouldn't mind expounding on that, I mean, I've looked in a little bit on Indeed on what my median should be. And Maple Grove job that Michelle and Alan helped me with, I definitely was like, yeah, I want the max. And they're like, yeah, you're going to get that in 5 years because it's a state job. And that's just how it is, so I didn't get that position. I think I'm just going to go ahead and assume that's why. But can you expound on that a little bit, on fighting for that salary range? Because that was really one of the first questions I've had. And I'm now up to the HR director tomorrow for this position. If you wouldn't mind,
So
how to help that.
Yeah, Alan and I had a fairly lengthy conversation about that specific topic. And so when I went to the tech startup, from a salary perspective, it was a significant jump for me. The other side of that coin was that the tech startups, they don't offer a lot of benefits. So there's no 401k matching. They have what's called flexible time off, which essentially you can take as much time off as you want. You're just not going to get paid for it. So like at the bank, you start and you have, weeks and weeks of time off. You get, all of the federal holidays. You get 10 days sick leave, all this stuff. So between the 401k matching, all of the actual paid time off, what they were, the range in terms of like the salary grade that they were offering the position, essentially what I was doing was, okay, I got this really, nice bump at the tech startup, and, with all of these other things kind of that went away, now I want to come back to the bank. And I basically framed it up to them like, hey, I'm not looking for, a salary increase more and above than what I'm making. So that was specific to me, because I knew on the other side of it, I was actually making up so much more in terms of these benefits. So with the 401k match, with the added vacation, all this other stuff, I basically put it to them and I said, I need to make this amount because this is what I need to make. And after I said it, I just let the uncomfortable silence linger. And just don't say anything. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable because, it's an uncomfortable conversation, but like, just hold firm, just let them linger. And if they, kind of give you some pushback, just say, if you can't move, then say, I can't move, and let them, say, I really want to move forward. This is a great position. But unfortunately, my financial situation, like, this is what I need. And that,
Okay.
I didn't get too deep into that, but I mean, I more or less just said, this is the salary that I'm making. This is the salary that I need. What can we do?
Okay. And that's awesome. And so what's funny about that is that, okay, so this HR, it was kind of again, it was an entry position, and I knew that it was way under what I wanted. And so when he asked me, I said, okay, well, I need to make at least of what I'm making now, gave him my number. It was like literally like 20,000 less a year from what I make now. And he actually was like, well, I mean, we probably have to bring it up to a board, but we could probably work with you a little bit. And I was like, holy cow, especially for an entry position. And now that I'm going to interview for a different position tomorrow that I know automatically pays more, it's a recruiting manager. I think I might have mentioned that.
Yeah.
So now that he knows what I said about the HR position, this is a total different position. I feel like he already has it in his head, like, oh, well, I know that we can already pay her at her, at what she said. So I definitely don't want to screw that up, So I'm definitely in a weird predicament.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to hear what other people have to say. But I mean, one thing that is probably true is like, hey, when was that last conversation that you had about where you first put the number out there?
Last week.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, like, if it was a month ago, you could say, hey, things have changed, like there's a different situation.
I'm buying an Audi now. Sorry.
Yeah. New financial obligation. So.
Yeah, I know one thing too. When I do it too, I mean, I have my idea, my number, but I also ask them first, kind of, and they say, what this position, whatever, and I go, well, what is the range for this position? Kind of put it back on them. And I had the HR.
I'm going to piggyback off Mike because
Yeah.
that's exactly, I'm a
It's a
firm
really
believer
good
in that is put it right back onto them. Well, if they go, how much money do you want to make? They go, well, there's already probably a number for that position that's, you know, what you were paying the last person or maybe what the national average is. Maybe you could give me a little more insight to what that number might look like, and keep your number in your head for what you want to make. But if it's lower and there's negotiation that might need to be done, I mean, even for myself in my last one, I knew going into it that there was a $3,000 decrease from the job that I was doing to the job that I am doing. But I was able to sit there and say, hey, based on the fact that I have the knowledge and the know-how to use this program, I'm already connected with these things, and be able to sell yourself a little bit more on that and say, hey, here's the reason why you should maybe pay me a little bit more than what that lower starting point or that average is. But I always have a tough time going, well, I have to make this much money, because that might kill you right there. And they go, we got another person who's willing to work for less, and they're just as qualified, and you just lost yourself the job.
And the other option that can happen too is you have your number, you've done your research, you put it back to them, and they come back with a higher number, and you go, I can work with that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
you can do the research ahead of time. There are published figures for like every job out there in every industry, and you can find the kind of the range for a college graduate or someone who's more experienced, and just when they ask you that question, say, well, based on the research I did, here's the range for this position that I found, and based on, like Zach was saying, then add to that based on my experience and my length of.
Does everybody know, like, just show of hands, who knows what ONET is? ONET online?
One more time,
That
Zach.
is-
Can I piggyback on that real quick?
Can you repeat that? What's the question?
I'm gonna type
Show of hands of
Go
what?
ahead.
Show of hands of what? Oh.
So
ONET.
ONET. So ONET has a linkage. It's the federal database for the jobs coded by the federal government for anything and everything. But there is a state website, and I'm going to put it in chat. It is LMI, data information for the state of Minnesota for jobs, and it is by region. So you can put in the search, and I just put it out there, whatever the job title is. In human resources, you would have to choose human resources and drop down to recruitment or management or whatever, depending on what you're looking for. But it's able to divide it by region, what the range is for Minnesota, which is data gathered by businesses in the state of Minnesota. So it's not just like a Glassdoor where you're reporting your wages directly to the, if you will, database. This is legitimate businesses that have reported the wages for those different occupational codes.
And that's very helpful, Heather, because I actually did do that Glassdoor thing. And the median was like $25,000 difference too. You know, especially because I know recruiting a lot of times it's, you know, there's probably some base pay plus there's probably some commission. So that was very difficult for me. The HR positions were pretty easy. So thank you for that. That is very helpful.
There is a lot of other data related to experience, what college grads get and such. The state of Minnesota's LMI as a whole, but the one you were particularly referencing would have been the OES, which is the one I threw out there, but they have the whole data tools listed on the side, and there are a bunch of other ones too. And Zach, I'm sure you're familiar with that with working for the state prior.
One thing I would add too is if you're using ONET, you can look at what your military ID is. So if there's an MOS in there, you can do the Air Force or the Navy or any other one and pull up your actual MOS, and then it will convert it to job titles that are currently, and then go into what you're talking about, Heather, and then take a look at what those ranges are as well. And also add in time that you were in grade, what your transitions were, what your advancements were, and what you're bringing to the table over and above. So it's another resource that can help you build. And it's also helpful in sometimes bringing to the employer what else you have to offer that's over and above what they're asking for.
Alan, can I share my screen so I can show people how to use kind of this ONET stuff?
I know, and it's funny when, the military, I've gotten a whopping 1% increase in the last 10 years, so,
Hey,
when you,
Zach, before
It's
you do
not
that, I
that
want to hear,
different in the
Stephanie was
corporate
going to say something.
Oh, yeah. So kind of backtracking slightly, but one maybe piece of advice for Brittany for what you may be able to bring, since it's a completely different position and it's a higher level position with more responsibilities, you definitely as a candidate have the right to come in and say, based on the increased responsibilities for this position, I would like to be here. But absolutely, anytime that you can do it, just like Zach said, like ask for what the range is. Not every employer has an exact number of what they're looking for. Sometimes they're trying to feel it out a little bit based on what candidates are telling them. But any sort of large company, they have a range. And a lot of times
okay,
they have a pay scale too.
Mhm.
So you'd be brought into, recruiter one, and they have the whole thing laid out. That's again, big companies, small companies,
yeah,
different. And I like to use the Bureau of Labor Statistics for getting salary information. Using Glassdoor and pay scale and all of that stuff, that is all information that people are putting in about themselves. They are you being truthful when you're logging in and putting that in there? Are all these people real? Are
and bitter, and yeah,
will make profiles just to be able to get information and make like a fake kind of person and they might have that data now in their database. So it's not the best thing to go off of in my opinion, but also a software engineer, for example, someone who has the same amount of experience who's applying for a job at a company with 100 people is going to have an insanely different salary, like be able to get a job at salary compared to that same exact position, same qualifications, same location as a company that's 10,000 employees. So that's a huge thing to think about too. I'm coming from a company of 60 employees. So if someone comes in as a software engineer and they're looking for like $130,000, that might be legitimate at a huge company, but maybe we can't do that here. So you have to kind of know your audience a little bit too. But yeah, Bureau of Labor Statistics is helpful. It's just you're also getting all of the different companies. So if there's
yeah,
these resources like from the state that break it down a little bit more, and you can understand what a 100% company versus a 5,000 person company in the city of Bloomington would pay for that particular position, that's going to be really helpful.
okay, that's great. That is great news. Thank you for that. And it is a huge company because some of their positions have their exact salary. Of course, this one says competitive, so I was like, dang it, So is it a true story, if anyone can answer this, that because I will tell you, one of the interviews that I had, I tried to negotiate my medical benefits, because I can get TRICARE or VA benefits, and they didn't really seem to care that much about that. Is that a true negotiation tool? Has anyone seen it, like it's been helpful or not to try to compensate, more money?
Benefits are super expensive for companies to pay for employees. So that absolutely is a negotiating factor. If an employer knows that you're not going to be on their health plan and you want to share that information and use it as a way to get a little bit of an increase in salary, it could work. You could always bring it up. But benefits is a huge thing that people should think about when applying for a job. Like 401k matches are insanely lucrative. We don't offer that at our company. We're very small. We hope to one day, but it's amazing how much money you're getting in a full comp package just from benefits. So something to think about.
It's also a nice tax break
Thank
for
you.
companies hiring a veteran. So that also can save them some money too. I don't remember what the number is or anything, but I know that's a big part to it for that.
At our company, if you use none of the benefits, they will increase your wages by a certain amount just because of the cost. But I'm like one benefit I'm using one benefit that I need to kick out, stupid dental. But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of flexibility, in that area. One of the biggest things when you're looking at salary too, if you know that a company has a range of, say, this much, it really becomes incumbent upon yourself to really match your experiences and competencies with what they're looking for. That's how you get higher into that range, not because you say this, but you're actually able to demonstrate and connect them. And so that brings into a certain amount of research you have to do and get kind of behind the scenes on what the company's looking for and what they need. So for example, when I was competing on my position, I had a bunch of product management experience, but it didn't quite necessarily match the type of stuff that MTS was looking for. But I was able to combine a decent amount of product management experience along with some technical skills to kind of link the two and be able to get myself higher up on their scale. And what happens is when they're looking at you, like, here's how it works at MTS. You're assigning seniority within that job position. So levels, say 1, 2, or 3. You're assigning special skills, knowledge, and these types of identifiers as well. So the more kind of questions that you can kind of ask and start to probe in the informational interview and then in that initial hiring manager interview, the more insight you're going to be trying to draw. So when you're talking, you're trying to find out what are they looking for beyond the description? What is the things that are valuable, and how do I match with that?
A lot
Thank
of
you.
that information, I mean, if you really read the job description in some pretty do it in detail or look at the details about it, a lot of times it's listed in there, and when it says something like, requirement detail oriented, be prepared to explain exactly a situation when you used the skills that you have that shows and proves that you're detail oriented. That's huge, because you can always say, yeah, I'm great with working with people, I'm detail oriented, but how? Prove it. Be ready with something. So that's a good way. It's just starting with the job description and reading those requirements, being able to show examples from your past, personal or professional, that prove that you've used that skill successfully.
I've got a general question on this, and this is for people who are recruiters, have been recruiters, or hiring managers. So on the topic of salary, how, like say I'm going to ask for a higher salary, and that's above the range of, that's a pucker factor that comes in. What would be the best way to help that I could help the hiring manager want to advocate for me for getting a higher salary range? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, how do I get the person that's across the desk from me on my side to go advocate for a higher number?
If you had a really good interview and you have a lot of examples of what they're looking for, I many times have gone above the initial range and got it approved because I was able to bring to the owner of the company or the CFO or whomever made the decision, this is why it's worth the difference. And finding the perfect candidate is so difficult that if you find a good candidate, you want that candidate, and there needs to be a very good reason why you would need to pass then. And it happens if it's just out of budget, it's not possible, then that happens. But you have to understand that person who's fighting on your behalf has to be prepared with all of the reasons why you need that job and why you're the right person. So prepare them, give them all the ammo that they need to bring it up to the boss. And if they can make that argument, I mean, recruiting is super hard, guys. And managers definitely don't like having open roles that they have to fill. And then it means more training, and it takes a lot of time. So when you have the perfect person, people want to bring that person on, and it's exciting. But yeah, just prepare the hiring manager or the HR person with all of the details that they would need to fight for you.
Thank you. Zach, did you have something you wanted to demonstrate? I remember you saying. Present in name only. Oh, there we go.
Is it showing my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is ONET Online. And if you look down, if anybody see my cursor down here on the bottom right, it says Attention Veterans. So that can be used for, anybody when we talked about, somebody had mentioned looking up military stuff. So if you go to Get Started there, and you scroll down just a little bit, I always liked using this part over here, Find Career Like Your Military Job. So I'll go just on mine, the Mighty Marine Corps. And I'll just do my MOS. I was a 1371 combat engineer. So based on mine, it's going to show me right here 19 civilian careers that are similar to that code. And they can look. Part of the resume is always Did it kick me off? Mine's doing all kinds of weird things.
Yeah, mine's freezing up and doing weird stuff too.
Is my screen still sharing?
No.
Nope. Do it again. Zoom crasher.
Seriously. Back good?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what we're looking at. Job outlook. Very likely in the near future, these are the prices. And this is very accurate. When I started my first job out of college, was $59,000 was my starting point. Within a few years, I was close to 70. But if you want to look for finding jobs, go based on Minnesota, what your zip code is, and you can use National Labor Exchange, Career Builder. A lot of you are probably already on Indeed. But these are good things to go to, and especially coming out of the military, there are going to be things that pop up. Maybe it's not going to do it. Well, there would be jobs that show up down here. It doesn't surprise me that much that the construction industry may not be hiring as much for that kind of project management stuff. But going into that now, here's information on wage info. If you want to click around that, this has changed a little bit, so this is a little new to me. And then there's a good breakdown for Minnesota and the United States on, they changed this a little bit here recently, but you know, look at the percentages. I mean, it's only saying 10%, but it gives you an idea of how to negotiate, you know, where you're at. Here's what here's the national average. Well, Minnesota's not too far behind it. But, you know, looking at this range, that's going to be somebody who's been, you know, as a senior VP and has 20 to 25 years of experience is probably getting close up into that range. So it's very helpful. Now, going all the way back to the main page, if you are looking for, say you're just trying to look for new jobs and you want more information on what it is that you're going to be doing. So you want to get into healthcare. Just, you know, do a quick search on that. There's usually 20 different occupations that'll pull up there. We'll just go registered nurse since it's up towards the top. But a lot of the times it's going to give you a good description of what the job is, other types of titles that are related to it. And then again, these tasks, technologies, the knowledge, I mean, if you have it all and you have already the qualifications, it's stuff that, you know, is extremely beneficial to add to the resume. A lot of good information to go through there. If you need to find extra training, certifications, licensing, or anything, good ways to go through and do that. But play with it. There's a lot of good information, you know, just to bring a lot of this stuff over. And then when you get down into here, this is helpful too. This is where your wage trends. You can find those also in here. And then, you know, right back into that job search. So let me change this up. We'll see if this works. A lot of times so when these pull up, they'll show the jobs right in here. And a lot of them will have a, there's a little star and I can't remember what it says. There's a stamp on it. Those are federally contracted jobs. And if you already have so much time in the military, that actually just adds towards pensions and whatnot for you know, retirement and whatnot. So. Kind of helpful, I hope, for everybody. I know that's kind of quick, down and dirty.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
to piggyback, and to piggyback, yeah, to piggyback that, then would go further in depth with the Minnesota-based deed tool because it is interfacing with the ONET codes. So you do go to the deed side, that is where it's breaking down our state level data, not just the whole state, but then by region and different fields within that. So if, for example, you are looking at HR and you're looking at like a trade base versus a corporate base versus whatever, it will break down the salary ranges by that too.
Can you demo that real quick, Heather?
Sure. Do I have share screen option?
Yep.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm gonna pull this open.
Show Brittany how much she could make.
All right. Well, I was already on that particular part. So this is, I'll back it up, but this is for human resource managers. So I'm going to go back to the way I did that. So this is the hyperlink that it will take you to directly is this here. And you'll see that there is a breakdown of regions within the state. So I didn't break it down, but it will on the secondary level. So I know that if I try to do recruitment or whatever, it's just gonna be easier if I do the general generic overview of human resources. Then below that, it will have a drop down and you'll see there's tons of different ones. And since I was already on managers, I'm just gonna go to that one. Then from there, because our state's clunky, you have to have multiple clicks to get to what you want. You have then it broken down by what the Minnesota region is. But then if you look over here, you have the geography breakdown, the industry breakdown, that occupation. So that's true for all sorts of ones. I just chose the HR manager particular. Further down, it will show your related fields. And then this all circles back to ONET. So if you read what this task list here is, it's going to be identical to what you see in the ONET description for that particular occupation. So, and this is all coming from the reported data from businesses in Minnesota. So this is not, again, a Glassdoor based one. You can do that for any industry.
And that link is in the chat.
Yep. It's somewhere in the chat. I don't know where exactly within it, but I can always resend it in case it got further back at this point, which very well go that route. And then I did get a question about software engineer, so I'll go back out and show that one. Hold on a second. And I don't know if I have to do engineer first and then get a drop down. We'll find out. I have not searched that one. So I'm going to go with the developer side. Reminds you, Alan, of our conversation earlier. So it doesn't show it that route, but I could go with computer occupations and or engineers, whichever the two, just to get an overview. And that does happen at times because this gets over, if you will.
What about just software or application?
I could do application. Let's see if I have to clear. Yeah, I do. I remember how clunky this is. I haven't done this for a while, sorry. Let's see if this will pull it. It might not. So we're gonna go with this one and see if it will pull it this way. No, I'm gonna go to just computer programmers just for the sake of showing another step. It should. You gotta be kidding me. Nonetheless, it really should show you and or computer.
Huh.
I'm just gonna do engineers, apparently is where I'm going at this point. But, you know, if it's a smaller occupation size, it may not be able to break it down at the full level, but it's still gonna show you a breakdown of what areas that particular industry is in, what the different occupations are down below here for, I mean, I guess we get close kind of with some of these, but not really, sorry. But I bet if I did programmer, I could find that one because that's a very common job title. Anyways, you guys could play with it, but it does feed directly with ONET, which pulls it from the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is Minnesota's. And this exists in all states too. If anyone ever does move or relocate, if you look up at OES on any state, it will do this for you. It's a federal requirement.
Heather, do you have any idea how often they update us? Is it quarterly or annually? Any ideas?
Quarterly. It's quarterly as far as I know. And I don't know with COVID if that's accurate right now because I don't know who has all been deemed to be essential with Indeed. I know I'm still working, but I don't know beyond that. So, but it's fairly current, and I have a feeling the trending wages will change significantly with COVID recalibrating some industries. So I'm just going to pull real quick to the data home to show they have a whole bunch of data tools beyond that one, by the way, just because it's a fun place to play if you have other needs that you might want to look at. This whole list over here exists, so bachelor degrees and careers that are out related to it, different employment outlooks, graduate employment outcomes, on and so forth. This all is Minnesota-based statistics. So, and I could drop that one directly in the chat to the actual tool poll. And I'll talk through all the different things that it does. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Cool. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Wes on his journey? I know one thing that I was interested in, Wes, if you could take a moment to explain, is you mentioned you refined your elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did that process look like to you? What was wrong with your elevator pitch and what needed to change in it?
Yeah, so kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Really understanding who I was pitching to. So, you know, when I kind of approached it, I kind of took the perspective of what if I were on the other side, I'd want to know, oh, okay, what have you been up to? What's been happening? What are some of the highlights? What are some of the things that you've been up to? But you know, like I said, the guy who I was talking to, he doesn't have a lot of spare time. He really wasn't that much interested in actually giving advice, which is what I had kind of approached the conversation with. He had set in his mind the outcome that he wanted from the conversation already. So he wasn't giving any advice. He knew that what I had done at the bank prior. He understood by me reaching out that, hey, maybe there's an opportunity to have him come back. And that was all he needed to know. So, you know, he didn't really care about, oh, well, you know, things didn't really work out. I've had, you know, this issue, that issue, and, oh, here's some cool things that I did. He just wanted to know if I would be interested in coming back to the bank. So understanding that that was the whole reason for him responding to my email in the first place and kind of crafting the communication around that understanding was probably pretty critical, because if I went and gave him some, you know, long-winded talk about, oh yeah, I've been doing this and I've been doing that, at some point he probably would have just gotten frustrated and cut me off and said, hey, blah, 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 let's get to what I want to talk about. Whereas like you had kind of, you know, helped me, you know, discover like, hey, talk about what he wants to talk about. Get to that point and get to it quick so that he can give his response and give his input and move the conversation in the direction that I eventually wanted it to end up in the first place. So just getting there quicker by knowing who it is that I was talking to.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, any other final questions for Wes? Awesome. Wes, I want to take the time to thank you for doing this, for taking the time to share your experience with us. I'm going to pause or stop the recording now. But I'm very grateful that you took the time to do this. Thank you.